Streaming. Hang on one second. It's still connecting to good old YouTube.
You got it.
Okay. Mike, please introduce yourself and let us know what's going to be going on here.
All right, my name is Mike Williams, and I'm the author of Doing to Done, Productivity Made Simple. I have a book around here someplace. Ta-da. There we go. And then I also have a solution called the Clarity Collection, which is an analog solution for busy digital professionals. But today's focus is really a continuation of our journey through the Doing to Done methodology. I think last time we focused on how do I get the stuff out of my head that has my attention down into a form where I can do something with it, and basically how to get stuff off your brain and into doing to done statements. That is the foundation of a good productivity system, or a system that provides clarity to the agreements that you've made with yourself and others, is the way I like to say it. And then within some of those done statements are basically projects. So today we're going to explore what it looks like to get even clearer on the project that you've taken on and how to work through it. So that's what we're going to work on today.
Fantastic. Welcome, Began. Same thing like Alfred. As we go on, feel free to ask any questions in chat or share what you're working on. If you're working on a project, a career, a business, something, feel free to share as we go through this. All right, Mike.
Okay. And as we move through this, we've got an hour. So what I'm going to do first is kind of paint a picture, give you an overview. Doing to Done is built on a series of maps, really, to explain the methodology. And you can think of the maps as just documents that have well-placed, beautiful questions. And these questions are there at the appropriate level of perspective that you're working on. So, a quick overview of the Doing to Done methodology. We help people start with where are they in current reality. So, I have a life map here called, or a map here called the life map, which helps you work through a series of questions about where am I on my journey in life. And then wherever your current reality is, that creates your current context, which creates your current content that you're dealing with in your life. So this whole map series is available at doingtodone.com. If you click in the Clarity Collection section, there's a place where you can go down and get these maps if you're interested in that. Then next, what I help people do is once I find where they are in life, then there's a series of what I call the core Doing to Done maps. And these are the maps that I try to get in people's leadership toolbox, because once they understand these maps and how to use them, then they can basically take anything and break it down into its pieces and put it back together so you can see the whole a little better and a little clearer. So these three maps are the role clarity map. So based on where you're at in current reality today, there's different roles you're playing in your life, from personal roles to professional roles. So we help clarify those. And then at the bottom here, there is something called the Doing to Done map, which I'll give a brief overview here in a second. And then in the middle here, we have something called the Project Clarity map, which is going to be the focus of our work here today. So what I'm going to do is just continue to give you an overview, and then we'll kind of pause, and then Gary, I'll see if there's any particular projects we can work on today as a group, and break it down based on what I'm going to show you today. So the first thing I want to do is kind of recap where we left off. So last time we took things that were on your mind and got them off your mind. So how do we do that? We have this strategic map called a doing to done map, where on the left side, we ask you to brain sweep items off whatever's on your mind, and then we transform those into doing and done statements. So the key question is, what's on your mind? So if I were coaching you, I would ask you this question, and we'd spend 5 minutes just having you write down everything that's on your mind as quickly as possible. And what comes out is just a list of what's on your mind. So in this example, this busy professional had the dentist, the mom, they needed a will, they needed to work on a budget, expense, buy a house, um, all a presentation for a conference that's coming up. So that is what we call stuff. That's stuff that's on your mind. That's unclear thinking at this point, but at least we can see the thinking. And then the next piece that we do is we ask the what I call the heroic question, because this is a question that changes your life. For all those things that you wrote down on your list, you ask the question, is this thing actionable? Is it something I need to handle? And if the answer is yes, we transform that into doing and done statements. So this list, as it gets processed, starts to look like this. And what you'll note here is you have clear doing verbs on the left-hand side here, and then clear done verbs. So that shows what this thing will look like when you cross the finish line, and also represents the open loop that you're trying to close. So this list, the doing verbs and the done verbs and these statements, become an inventory of the agreements you've made with yourself and others. And the done verbs really are known as projects. Okay, so a project is a finish line that you're trying to get after. So this is the inventory of all the stuff that you've got going on in your life. So as a busy working professional or somebody who's in a startup business, you might be wearing multiple hats, from the CEO of the company to the person who's coding, to the person who's marketing, to the person who's fundraising, all those kinds of things. So in your role clarity map, those might be different roles that you're holding that then have very discrete projects, and those projects have discrete actions. And that's the hallmark of the doing to done system: role, project, and one next action to create momentum. This is the foundation. And once you start to get this foundation built, you start to get clarity in your brain. Instead of feeling like you have a party in the brain, feels like you have a calmer brain. And now, since your brain's not overloaded, you can start noticing and being present more in all the different roles that you hold in life. So now that we've got the inventory, the project clarity map selects some of those projects off that inventory and helps us think through them at a higher level of detail. So the project clarity map is a map of 6 questions. So you can think of this as a very specific, I like to think of it as the project management dojo, where you go in, and if you want to get clear on something, you run through this process. And if this becomes your standard for launching projects, then you have a consistent methodology for making sure you're really clear on why you're doing what you're doing. And then if you're working in a business partnership environment, or a team environment, or a company environment, this map then becomes a tool in your toolbox to help you create shared language, shared tools, and shared practices for how we launch projects here. So, for example, I work with a sunglass company, Gooder, and they use this as their default way for launching any project that the company does. So everything starts with a project clarity map, so you're clear on what you're doing and why. And we're going to go through this map today. Now, projects come in all kinds of different shapes and sizes. So not all projects need a project clarity map. A majority of the projects in your life can probably just be handled by identifying what's the one next action to move this thing toward the finish line. So some lower level projects might include, on the personal side, organizing a birthday party, decluttering your wardrobe, getting your taxes submitted. On a professional side, maybe organizing a team meeting or getting your performance review completed. I don't know if you necessarily need a project clarity map for that. Now, where it starts to come into play is in the middle here. But I'm going to save that for last. Now, on the higher end of a project clarity spectrum is projects that are managed by kind of your professional domain. So if you walk in and you get surgery at a hospital, you're going to fall into a process that is a well-defined project that's been run over and over and over again. No need to do any thinking because your professional discipline has handled that for you. Building commercial buildings, publishing a novel or things like that might be higher level kind of projects. Landing the rover on Mars is a higher level project. But what we're really talking about is where a majority of our, professional and more complex projects live is right here in the middle. So if you're getting married, that can be a complex project. You're purchasing a home that can have multiple parts. If you're a college student submitting applications to colleges, that could be, a bigger project. And then on the professional side, particularly in startups, it could be defining the marketing plan, the product launch plan, getting your strategic plan approved, creating your business model is finished, market insight research completed. Those might be projects where you have more detail that you need to flesh out as you work on these projects. So the way this works is we select a project that's part of your inventory. So you already have a finish line that you're trying to get work towards. So in this one, I'm going to select a presentation. So let's pretend that you have a presentation that you need to deliver to somebody, your board of directors, a customer, or something like that. It's a pretty common project. Then the first thing you would do as you work through this is you would put the name of the project up here on the project clarity map, like I did, Akimbo Project Delivered. And then we start working through the nature of projects. And the nature of projects have two fundamental forms, divergent thinking and then convergent thinking. So divergent thinking is launching from the purpose, creating a vision, and then generating ideas. And I'm sure we've all been in like brainstorming sessions where, it gets a little crazy out there with the ideas. You got good ideas, bad ideas. And if you do brainstorming properly, you just want all kinds of ideas. You're not judging them yet. It's when you hit the convergent thinking and that energy is when you start providing some criteria for the ideas. Do they make it down into the organization plan that you're going to group these ideas into? And does this plan, once you review it, help you get to your purpose and vision? And then if it does, what's the one next action to move it forward? So we're back to one next action and then who owns it. So let's walk through this process a little bit. So Gary, so far so good, tech check?
Yeah, so far so good.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, just like, we've gone over before, like, one of the key reasons I really appreciate and enjoy this system is it's very much rooted in this purpose and vision, and it's very much like design thinking, right? You want to make sure that everything you're doing is in alignment with very clear goals, but also those underlying factors in regards to your brand, personal or your company, and the values, the culture that you want to represent, and the mission, and all these different elements. So it's great that, yeah, you're helping people hone in on this divergent thinking and build on that.
Yeah. And everything here is a system within a system. So it's a series of closed loop systems, and we're always trying to close the loop. And the more cleanly and clearly you close the loops, the more efficient and effective you are in getting from point A to point B. And that's kind of what it's all about. And ideally, as you move from point A to point B, you can do so with clarity and kindness for yourself, and then also kindness for others, and really get a lot of good work done with the fun energy and spirit about you. So let's move through this quickly. And then once I move through this example, then we can do a live example if anybody has one that they want to work through live. So the first thing that we do when launching a project is we define the purpose. So for example, in this Akimbo presentation, the purpose is to show working professionals how doing to done works so they can turn overwhelm into clarity with ease. So a purpose statement is just a very simple statement that takes the form that it's to do something or to do something so that a contribution can show up. So this is um, once you work on the art of creating clarity, this very simple statement, understanding how to write a purpose statement, is like your North Star for the project. Now that we've got our purpose set, then we move over to the second piece. Now, in the vision of wild success, and this is an abbreviated version, you can make it,
One of the key
you
reasons I
can
really
type up a document
appreciate and
to
enjoy this.
encapsulate your vision of wild success. I kind of like what Amazon does, where they write a press release on what wild success is going to look like. So if you imagine bringing a photographer, a videographer, and a reporter with a microphone, and you think about the customers and the stakeholders for the project, and it's 3 to 6 months after you've completed it, and you stick a microphone in their face, and they tell you why this thing was so successful. That's what you want to capture here in the vision of wild success. You might even put the stakeholder name and the quote that they gave you. So, in this one, the session was amazing. I feel more in control already. I have an approach that works. I'm going to share this with my team, and I'd love to get certified. So, in this, what I'm projecting onto it is, the ability for people to think that the session was awesome, that they immediately got a sense of being in control, that they have found an approach that actually works, that they're going to go back and share it with their team and spread the information. And because of that enthusiasm, they might even sign up for the certification program that I offer. So that's my vision of wild success for why I'm delivering this presentation to this group. Okay, so now that I've got a purpose and vision of wild success, those two things kind of go like, wine and cheese. They pair so well together and help paint the whole picture. Now we have to say, okay, let's go down and do an ideation process. And there's so many of them to choose from the world of how to do ideation, but whichever one works best for you, we need to get ideas out on how to get to that purpose and vision statement that we set for ourselves. And one more thing on purpose and vision of wild success. If you're working with, say, a business partner or a partner or a group of people, it is critical that you do this step, together. It's best if you can co-create it, but at minimum, share your purpose and vision of wild success with the group So they know where they're going and why. I've seen so many projects fail because they just start in who's got a good idea. They jump right to step 3 without understanding why they're doing what they're doing. So steps 1 and 2 are critical for leaders who want to walk into a path of clarity and spread clarity within yourself and within your organizations. So let's go down to step 3. So step 3 is just pure, dump out ideas, no judging, good ideas and bad ideas. It's really about quantity over quality at this point to get all the ideas out there for consideration on what you need to do. So that's what this step is. And I think most people are familiar with getting that out there. What they might not be familiar with is putting boundaries and rules on what's allowed and what's not allowed. For example, you're going for quantity over quality, so you're not judging yet. The judging comes in down here. You might time box this so you don't do it forever. And also, you might iterate on it based on what you discover between ideation and organization. But once you've been in a brainstorming session, I'm sure you've felt the tension of when is this thing going to stop? When are you going to stop brainstorming and start doing? And that is the nature of shifting from divergent thinking to now channeling your convergent energy to say, let's make some meaning of this stuff so we can do something with it, so we can start taking action. So the people who are associative thinkers kind of thrive in this ideation space, and sometimes they struggle a little bit to slow down and organize. From a brain perspective, the way I like to describe it is sometimes people are driving with brains that are Ferraris. So they are great at creating ideas, but then they have to get out of the Ferrari and get into a tractor and then start laying some lines in a field. And that's the organization phase. You have to slow down, then lay down the plan. So, so an organization, what we're doing is we're really naming the groupings of work that need to happen, and then having, say, an outline or work breakdown structure that explains the kind of work that needs to be done. So in this one, for this presentation, we've got content development work, we've got prep work for the presentation, practice, practice, practice. Then we're going to deliver. And that means we've got our pre-presentation set up, our delivery, our post-presentation activities. And then after the event, you've got your review and follow-up. So that's how this event was organized. So now we need to go down to step 5 and say, will this plan achieve our purpose? And will this plan fulfill your vision? And if you agree that those are yes and yes, you would check off those boxes. If you don't agree yet that you can say yes to those, then you have more work to do, which might drive you back to ideation or the organization phase. And you keep circling there until you can say yes and yes. And once you say yes, then the question becomes, okay, what's the one next action I need to do to move this project forward? And in this case, I need to email Christine to request special Akimbo images for the presentation. So this level of thinking, what I've noticed across the thousands of people that I've coached and trained, is it doesn't take a lot of time to do this. You could actually do a quality, amount of thinking to get clear on what you're doing and why. And in around 15 minutes, certainly within 45, you can come up with a very decent plan that is well organized and well thought through. What I see is people don't know these steps. They don't follow these steps in this order. Therefore, they might start at ideation and start drifting because they don't know what the purpose and vision was to begin with. So that's that. If you're delegating meetings and or projects to people, the project clarity map is awesome for delegating projects to others. And if you're receiving a delegated project, making sure you know all this information, particularly the purpose and vision from the stakeholder who's delegating it to you, is critically important for your success in getting to the finish line of this project. So that's it. In summary, that is the project management thinking that we'll be exercising today. So just the presentation is not over, but if you want to take a screenshot of this, if you have any questions or want to set up a virtual coffee with me, you can do that down here. And I'd be happy to engage with folks and answer questions or work through a project with you. Now, having done that, Gary, um, we can take somebody's project and work through it live if you want to demonstrate how this works.
Yeah,
And one of the
yeah,
ways
that'd
I
be
like to
awesome.
do
I
that
know.
is,
No, I was gonna
yeah,
say I know William's been working on a couple different interesting projects. So yeah, William, you're welcome to come up on stage and work with Mike here if you're willing. Feel free to like raise your hand or use chat. I also want to circle back real quick and touch on again, people doing things out of order and not setting the purpose and intention and doing those reviews and making sure that you know they're still in alignment with these goals, these missions, these values, this culture. It's something that comes up very very often in a lot of different like office hours with mentors that we do, or just discussions that I have when I'm mentoring or working in the community. A lot of people, especially because of what they're exposed to in these different entrepreneurial communities, startup communities, they hyper focus on going as fast as possible. And that leads to them doing things out of order, skipping incredibly critical steps, and losing sight of the goals, the intention, and again, those guiding principles, whether that's the mission, the vision, the values, the culture. And yeah, I really appreciate the system, how simple it is when again you compare it to Scrum or other agile project management systems, and how rooted it is in the intangible elements of what makes a cohesive brand a enjoyable experience for the people that you're servicing and what you're trying to accomplish. So yeah, I just really want to call attention to that and emphasize how important that is. But yeah, what we got? Began, you're in here too. You're welcome to use the chat if you want to share. We can, do the exercise with you as well. Anyone that's tuning in on YouTube, LinkedIn, Twitch, same deal. Feel free if you want to share, ask questions, work something out. Yeah.
and while we're waiting for something to show up there, you mentioned Scrum and different kinds of ways that projects get executed. This is where the Project Clarity Map is also a wonderful integration tool because typically all projects have a purpose vision. You have to ideate somehow, but then you have to organize them. And sometimes you organize them into a lean project, a lean Six Sigma project, agile, whatever methodology you use. It's usually that the ethos of that methodology is expressed on how they suggest you organize that work. So you can bring those templates into the organization phase and use a lot of best practice wisdom that's out there. A great example is if you use the business model canvas. Why am I starting this business? What's the vision? Why success? And then you can organize your business thoughts into the business model canvas. I do that a lot with clients as well.
Yeah, I'm glad you
And one of the best
brought that up
frameworks,
too.
yeah, one of the best frameworks I've seen for small businesses is coming from a company called TrueSpace, truespace.com. They did a lot of research with thousands of small businesses with Gallup to come up with a very robust framework to help small businesses become predictable and repeatable as they seek to grow past the $10 million mark, which is kind of a threshold for a lot of financial institutions and such. All right, Gary, we got anybody want to work through a project?
Who wants to be brave? I know, William, you said you don't know if you have a good example at the moment, but yeah, I mean, I know you've got a couple things that you're already active with. You also have ideas of new ventures that you'd like to pursue. Um, you know, it could be a larger venture, a larger project, or just something small that's, you know, what's the next step to take with,
Yeah.
something small, whatever it is. Same deal. Began like, yeah, you're welcome to use the chat and share and ask questions. And yeah, you can work through it. Yeah. If not, then yeah, let's see what we can do to, yeah, create some other demonstrations.
And I can always just run through a typical business kind of example as well.
Let's see. William's typing.
Okay.
Okay. One thing I'm working on is cleaning up Graph. I'm so bad at pronunciation, but Graphemica to get more traffic and ad revenue.
Okay, so so it sounds like the project might be to look into ways to increase ad revenue, or if you've already selected a path for um, ad revenue, it might be an implementation project. So are you researching ways to do it, or are you ready to implement a way you've already researched?
Good questions. William's adding a little bit more right now.
Yeah.
Those just joining us on LinkedIn, feel free to share any projects if you want Mike to work through the system and help you find clarity on your focus and hopefully, yeah, go about it in a way with ease. Yeah, feel free to just use the chat and let us know what you're working on, what your goals are, what your struggles are, and we can, yeah, build on that, ask more questions, and just use the chat to collect information that we can plug into these examples.
So Gary, I don't have the chat in front of me.
Yeah, I'll copy paste
See,
anything over here from LinkedIn if yeah, people want to get involved from there.
did William send back whether he's
Oh, William,
researching
yeah,
or
yeah, William
implementing?
over here on Starmada. He's William's still typing right at the moment.
Okay. But as William's typing, you can see just even from the coaching, how I'm starting to frame out what the finish line looks like, because either something needs to be researched or something needs to be implemented from the little I know about this context right now.
Yeah. Okay, so
And
William.
understanding
Oh,
the difference. Yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say, yeah, real quick. William added his goal is both of those. He wants to also look into improving the user experience and design to make it more useful, which seems to correspond with traffic increasing.
Okay, so let's if it's both of those, usually you have to research it before you implement something. So let's say that we're going to something is research. So it sounded like the original item was something about ad spend, you know, more effective ad spend or something like that. Is that true?
Yeah. So so William has a online tool that he wants to get more traffic to, but also wants to create more ad revenue as a result of that traffic with people coming to utilize the tool.
Okay.
And yeah, William, if you want to use your microphone, feel free to, yeah, you can jump on stage. Okay, yeah, let's do that. Um,
So ways to increase ad revenue research is how I might hold that. And so, William, the next question I have for you is what's the purpose of this project? If you were to come up with a purpose statement to,
Can you hear
it
me?
could be to increase ad revenue so that something, but if you were to formulate a purpose statement, what might that be?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So a purpose statement. Um, I don't know if I'm following exactly, but right. So right, what I'm trying to do currently is clean it up, and you know, there's like some rough edges and stuff, but basically like in adding some features that I'm kind of aware of in order to increase the traffic again. It went down a little bit a couple years ago. Um, And so I'm trying to increase it again so I can get some stable ad revenue. I'm going to switch the ad provider also. So I'm kind of doing like a mini overhaul of this like site that's been around for a while, um, in order to try to get the revenue up a bit. Because there's like currently ad revenue from it, um, but uh, I can increase it, by changing the ad revenue, or changing the ad service, and increasing the usability.
Okay. So, so to overhaul the site so we can get revenue for the site up year over year, something like that.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. And now that we've got, a pretty good sense of why it exists, what's your vision of wild success? So if you were to think about the humans that are going to interact with your site or the technologies that are interacting with your site, what do you see as the vision of wild success for the overhauled site? What's going to show up for you?
Hmm. That's an interesting question because the site is sort of it's always been like a side project. And so I kind of mentally, it's like I don't I sort of block myself from thinking about like wild success, because if I wanted to do like wild success, I would do things like maybe try to turn it into like a font store, like a typeface store, storefront.
Mhm.
Which is like one of the, and there's other ideas that I have like that to like turn it into something bigger, which like maybe I could do, but I've just never, my heart's never been in it enough. So I've just kept it as this sort of reference site. Um, and so when you say wild success, that's what I start thinking about is like, oh, well, I'll start selling fonts on it. I'll do all this other stuff. But then realistically, I haven't done that. Um, and I don't, it's like my heart isn't totally in it.
Okay.
So I don't know. I don't know how to answer the question.
Well, no, this is good because you're on the boundaries of the agreement that you want to make with yourself about
Okay.
this site. So so within what you're allowing yourself to think of as the boundaries, the constraint of the energy you want to put on this, it's your call. Like, do you want to go into wild success and explore your full vision of what this could be, or do you want to constrain it to um, a certain level of effort and put some boundaries on what it is and what it isn't? There is like between purpose and vision, there's uh, there's a question. Any constraints you want to put on this project sometimes pops up.
Okay.
Like, is this a minimal update? Is it an overhaul? Are there financial constraints, time constraints?
I
What do you
mean,
think?
yeah, it's hard for me to answer that. So I mean, it's this is both good and it's interesting. It's a challenge for me to answer that because I kind of have been approaching it more amorphously, I guess. That like I've been avoiding making those kinds of decisions and just trying to like do it, just more responsively, I guess, in terms of just like instead of strategically. Um,
Yeah.
so I don't know. I don't know that it's like that's a really hard question for me to answer. Um,
Well, one suggestion I might have is maybe you allow yourself to have two projects. One is a constrained project and one without constraints.
okay.
So you can just think robustly on both sides of that equation. And you're not committing to doing the projects per se. You're committing to um, thinking through the project. And then at the end of thinking through it, you can say, do I want to now allocate time, money, and resources to executing this project? But the nice thing is, and I love where you're coming from because you're not alone uh, in this thing, and which is how do I complete the thinking of this thing that's been on my mind for a bit? And the project clarity map is a good tool for just thinking, allowing yourself the permission to think through it at a deeper level without necessarily committing to it. But if you did commit to it, here's what the vision of wild success might look like. So, having said that, which side of that equation do you want to play with?
Well, it's easier for me to think about the wild success thing, but it's like it's always just like ideas. So it's like I can say when you ask me the question, it's like I can think, it's like I can get it like a vision in my head of like what wild success would look like, where it's like it would be like right. I can answer it. They would have like a store or probably, and then it would have like probably a media side similar to like Emojipedia, which like had I don't know what they're doing now, but in the 2010s they had like a whole like media side that they were doing where they were doing lots of posts and they were getting attention. Um, so generating content. Um, and so those are so I don't know if right. And so in wild success, right. So I mean right now it has traffic, so it'd be more traffic, sales from something, presumably like fonts is what comes to mind first, and then some sort of like right, like the content production side, we're getting more traffic and but also like having it be more like of a media organization in that regard or project in that regard, having blog posts or whatever, have it there's no social media for it now, for example. Um, so
I real quick, I wanna call attention to something. What you're doing is very relatable for a lot of founders, and what a lot of people struggle with in regards to building an MVP, a minimum viable product, it's finding that balance between the grand vision and scaling that down to what the MVP should be, and applying all those constraints, right? You're coming at it from a slightly different uh, uh, perspective and mentality with it, but again, as an exercise, as something that everyone can learn from, this whole process is very much the same when, yeah, you've got a huge ambition and you're trying to figure out what the MVP is. So this is good.
And William, if who is the customer of this site? Like paint me a picture of the human who's going to be visiting your site.
So yeah, like the two sort of big, I guess, like semi personas are like, it seems to be like uh, technical people, so people, probably software engineers that are uh, looking up the data about characters, and then the other one I don't fully know, but there's it's like things trend, and so like I'll have like characters for various things will like trend seasonally. It's like Christmas trees, and then there's things like um, characters for like like Arabic um, like phrases or whatever. There's like specific characters that are like whole phrases, um,
Yeah.
and like those will go through phases of like having more traffic too. And I don't really know who like the people are in both of those cases with like the seasonal stuff and religious stuff. Like I don't know exactly who those people are, or what they're exactly looking for. Um,
We'll
so
just call them people seeking trends.
okay, okay, that sounds good.
Okay. Now, if the technical person, the customer here, say the software engineer person, what might be your ideal quote from that person if you implemented this site and it went live and it was super duper successful, what might they say?
Hmm.
Would be a quote if I stuck a microphone in their face.
The good, the ones that I like the most are when people tell me that they use it all the time, and they yeah, that they're like using it all the time, and they find it really useful. I can look up and see if I can find one real quick. But I get some sometimes that are like that, where they say they're using it all the time, or sometimes it's when things break and they'll be like, oh, this isn't working or something, but I use it all the time. Um, so I guess that's like the biggest thing, is just that they're using it repeatedly, and that they
And
like it, that they enjoy using it. That's another one.
okay, and why is it really useful?
Hmm. I don't know. Um,
Is it the quality, the inventory, the search features, the site design, the quirkiness of it?
um, I mean, it's a good question. But so I often think with a lot of my software projects, when people seem to like them, that, I feel like they like them because it feels good to use. And so usually when I feel like I'm doing something well, it's I feel like I do it by feel, and I actually like want it to feel good while I'm using it. Um, just the way that like things load, and very, and the way the UI is. Um, and so that's what I usually focus on, and that seems to be like how, when people do like give compliments on my projects, that's usually like what they say. Um, and but then yeah, it's, I guess, and then beyond that is, um, I was trying to look up to see if I could find any of them real quick, but um, yeah, so that it feels good to use, the like the information. I mean, people don't normally like compliment about like the information being there, um, but yeah, I guess it's I focus more, I guess, on like those like qualitative aspects, which are, that feels good to use, that it looks good, that people enjoy going there.
Okay. So I put like it's really useful. It loads fast, great design, information design slash presentation is wonderful.
So here's one.
So
I said, thanks a lot for the project. I am using it daily and it's a delight. So that's, that was a recent one. Um, and here's another one. So
okay.
I've been using your Graphica website for years now. Thank you so much for creating and maintaining it. I'm always anxious that one day it would disappear without warning. Um, so these are the kinds of things that people say.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is great. Okay, so one of the things I want to point out is as you do your vision of wild success, and this is William for you and everybody else listening, is as you work through these quotes from people. So the reason I asked is to put a human in this story for me is because then I could hear what they're going to say about it. And when they're saying stuff about it, it actually starts pointing to some of your key performance features of your project that you might want to pay attention to. It might even lead you to your key performance indicators, like uptime, how fast it loads, that kind of stuff. Um, just through the story narrative that the vision of wild success brings you through, it helps you find those things along the way. So that's why the vision piece of this is really rich and important once you get used to it, particularly as you go down this story narrative of of either A, what you want people to say, or B, William, in your case, amplifying what you want people to say across maybe more scale or something like that. So let's move down to we're going to work on again we're working on the vision of wild success side of this thing, unabandoned wild success, not constrained. So I want to move down to the ideation phase. What are some things you would need to do to pull off this renewed vision of wild success for this site if you were to take it to the next level?
Mm,
And just brainstorm like 10 things that come off the top of your head.
I mean, I would need to. Well, my first step right now is to make things a little bit more information dense and but also just like a little bit. There's like little features to add autocomplete in the search. Bigger picture. It's like I would have to figure out how to do the whole font business probably. That has been the thing that has come up the most. But I would have to figure out how that whole thing works. Like I don't even know anything about that, about like how to create a font marketplace and actually get it functioning and having people actually contribute, fonts, I guess. Yeah, so I don't know how that works. So I'd have to figure that out and actually do it. And then on the media side, I'd have to create sort of a structure and then a process for producing content, either on the site or on social media over like an extended period of time, an ongoing process. So I'd have to develop a process for that. And so those seem to be the two big. So yeah, it's like
Awesome.
design enhancements, figure out the font thing, and yeah.
So, okay. So you've kind of brought me down to where your brain naturally goes. Like, what are the major buckets here? Design enhancements. Um, figure out, the market or the business model, right?
Okay.
So you might want to figure out the business model, design enhancements, and then what was the third one you said?
I think the media content creation
Okay.
process.
Yep. Create media content. So then, now that you've got like these major work buckets, I would say, make things more information dense. Where does that fit in these three buckets? Figure out business, design, or media content.
Design enhancements.
Autocomplete and search. Where would that fit?
Design enhancement.
Research font business model. Where does that?
Business model. Figure out business model.
How to create font marketplace.
Figure out business model.
How to get people to contribute.
That'd be, yeah, same thing. Figure out business model,
And media structure
media content.
and media content creation process.
Media content.
Okay. So notice how we are quickly starting to gather these things into the major work bucket chunks.
Okay.
So now the question is, let's pretend we built out this plan, or even as it exists now. Will this plan help you get to your purpose of to overhaul the site so we can get revenue for this site up year over year?
Does it get us closer to that?
Yeah.
I mean, hopefully. I don't, yeah.
Okay. I'll take that as a yes, at least for this model. Uh, and and if this were the only thing in your world to work on today, what would be your very next action that you would take to create momentum for this project?
I was planning to do the design enhancements today, some of those today.
Okay. And what do you need to do if I were watching you do design enhancements, what would you specifically be doing?
I was specifically going to work on the autocomplete for like the search. That was like my main priority for today for this project. So autocomplete for the search plus yeah, there's just like there's sort of like other design stuff related to it. There's like technical stuff that I was just like tweaking
Yeah. Yeah.
as
So notice how, when I first asked you that question, you said, I've got design stuff to do. Then I asked you, what specifically would you be doing? Work on autocomplete for this search. So I could see a person doing that, right? So the nature is getting down to this as the momentum building action. This is the first domino that your brain sees and says, I know exactly what that is. I can start working on that right now. If I said action, you're the hero of this story, you could move on that.
Okay.
So Williams, thank you again for just being a stellar participant here. But just in the spirit of recapping what we did was we moved through the pieces of the Project Clarity map. We moved through the purpose, the vision of wild success, ideation with William. We organized, we reviewed it, and we came up with the next action. And we did that in probably under a half an hour, and maybe within 15 minutes to get this level of thinking. So imagine if you just brought this into your leadership toolbox and you're able to do it over and over again for all the different things you need to think through, what kind of value that might add to you and your business overall. And if it becomes a standard, shared, what I'd like to say is shared language. So we have language in here: purpose, vision, ideation, organization, review, next action. You know what that language means. So shared language. Tool, this whole thing and the way that the language is organized is a framework, and this framework is a tool. So you have a shared tool that you can use that's predictable and repeatable. Shared language, shared tools, and practice. So going through this over and over again creates a practice and creates an approach for you to break down and put anything back together that you're considering doing, and help you think through it before you actually invest too much time and energy in doing it, to see if you even want to do it, to see what's missing, to see, what you see, and as you work through the process. So the practice helps you see the patterns, and then the patterns help you gain the wisdom that you can quickly break things down and kind of put them back together. Whether you're working on your own project, somebody's pitching a project to you, somebody's delegating a project to you. So Gary, I think that might be a good place to call it today.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah. I think it's great.
You want to
And
bow on it?
Yeah, I love it, and again, like there's a lot of these different practices and tools that everyone should do their best to utilize and explore and figure out, like you said earlier, what works best for them. But having these different tools and practices are so important because of what you just, highlighted. It allows you to more clearly understand what you're trying to do, why you're trying to do it, and identify those different gaps that may exist, or very quickly hone in on the opportunities to improve something, to innovate, to just, you know, understand how to create something that's more enjoyable, more beneficial, and more valuable to yourself, to others, to, the world, whatever that may be. So yeah, I hope, William, that yeah, this exercise was helpful, and I do really appreciate you being bold enough to come up here and work with Mike for yourself and for the entire community. So thank you for that.
And William, I dropped the example that we worked on together in the chat for you if you want to download it.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Awesome. Okay. Yes. Real quick, I want to thank everyone for tuning in, being a part of this. Hopefully, you all got some inspiration, some education, some clarity on how to approach whatever you're working on. Yeah, Mike, feel free to share anything you want the community to know about. Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, if people are interested in learning more about the approach, like we walked through the Doing to Done map. So if you go to Doing to Done, DOINGTODONE.com, go to the website, there's a section called the Clarity Collection. And within the Clarity Collection, you can actually go and download the maps. And I have a 60-minute tutorial that walks people through the maps if that's of interest to you. And it could be a good tool set for you or your teams, as well as there's coaching and webinar services and all that kind of stuff there. But in all that you do as entrepreneurs and starting up, implementing an idea, that is courageous work. That is creative work. So keep going. If you get clear on the one next action to move something forward, just one single next action is all you need to define to create momentum. That is the foundation. That is the minimum viable product of Doing to Done. One next action prevents overthinking, overcomplicating, breaks through overwhelm, breaks through procrastination, breaks through resistance. So I wish you well in all that you do. Keep going forward and know that Gary and I got your back if you need help.
Yes, thank you so much. Yeah, all right. Hope to see you all next time. We got a bunch more of office hours all week long. So yeah, check the schedule. And yeah, thank you again, Mike. You're the best.
You're welcome.
All right. Thanks again, William. Again, very brave, very awesome for the community. Thank you. All right. Take care, everyone.
Good luck, Mike.
Thank you.